Welcome to the Top Dog Mindset Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of running a successful dog training business. I'm your host, Kevin, joined by my co-host, Angel. Together, we bring you expert insights, inspiring stories, and practical tips. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, we're here to provide you with the necessary information to build a thriving dog training company. So relax, join us with a cup of coffee as we explore the Top Dog Mindset Podcast.
All right, welcome in everybody to another episode of the Top Dog Mindset Podcast. Kevin and Angel here. And today we're going to be talking about a topic that's been coming up recently for me and Angel. I had a sales call with a guy the other day, and I'll talk a little bit about that without going in too much into detail, because obviously I don't want to expose his personal information or anything like that. But Angel, it seems like you've been coming up against this as well, which is the idea of, are you actually willing to do the things that it takes to grow a profitable and bigger dog training company? So do you actually want to do those things, or do you just say, like in daydream and think, hey, yeah, that would be fun. That'd be cool to own that business. But are you actually willing to do the things that's going to take you from point A to point B? And yeah, just all the trials and tribulations along the way, they're going to come with that and all that stuff. So Angel, why don't you kind of kick it off and just talk a little bit about like your experience and what you've been seeing with this recently?
Yeah, well, I feel like I've seen it in a couple different versions. So some of them being like having clients who are wanting to grow, like they're already doing really good, they're successful, but they want to grow. They want to, have more revenue in their business. But obviously to get there, you have to take certain steps. Like you can only do so much when you are a one-man business or a one-woman business. And so sometimes that could look like, or I would say most of the time that looks like hiring people. So hiring someone to help with like answering the phone. So that kind of helps like free up that time of yours that you're spending on answering the phone, following back up with people, scheduling and stuff like that. Sometimes that means hiring more trainers or just taking on more dogs yourself, different things like that. And sometimes people are not willing to do those things. They don't want to have really responsibility over other people, or they have a fear behind hiring someone because what if I can't afford it? Or something we commonly hear is, but I'm a control freak. Like I don't want to have anyone else have control over anything in my business or anything like that. A lot of the times, like for those people who are genuinely wanting to grow, it can take a lot of just like game planning and figuring out like, what are you willing to do? What do you have to do right now? And what are you willing to do? Because what you're willing to do is really going to depend on if that growth can happen. And sometimes people will come to the conclusion like, okay, I'm actually comfortable with where I'm at. This is how I want my business to be. I'm cool with bringing in this much amount of money per month. Like I like the balance that I have, and they just kind of stay where they're at, which is perfectly fine. Or other people who it could be a mixture of them not willing to do the things it takes to grow, but also not really willing to do the things to sustain their business currently. So you just really need to make sure that you have all of your systems and processes down pat and, run a successful business with where you're at now before you can kind of expect yourself to grow, or even like hire on a team and train them to do the same things that you're doing currently.
Yeah. I got a question for you. When you said that when people talk about being a control freak, what have you heard me say the past like couple weeks? I've said that to you like a million times. What do I always say about that?
Did you think that Bill Gates wasn't a control freak?
Right. Yeah. And that's what I always think about with that, right? Where people say that all the time, like, I just am too much of a control freak, right? To me, what that is the ultimate excuse, and just what you're not willing to say is, I'm scared that somebody else would mess it up,
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, there are very talented people, and it's honestly kind of egotistical to think that you are the only person who can do it, and that there's nobody out there who could do it as well as me, or even close to as well as me, or that they couldn't do it better than me. It's a very pompous way of thinking. And I've fell victim to that for a long time, where it's just like, well, I'm just really good at this, so I'll just do it myself. And it would, yeah, I'm just too much of a control freak. But what I had to acknowledge is, I'm just scared that I'm going to hire somebody and they're going to screw it up, right? And then I'm going to have to clean up that mess. But, as I've found, especially with Top Dog Advertising, is that like there are really talented people, and you're a perfect example of, like, there are things that you unequivocally do better than I do. There's things that you have certain skill sets that, you have a more of a natural leaning to being more organized than me. You're in some cases better at having more difficult conversation around even like money with clients than I am. And I think part of that is also because like you're not as attached to it in the sense of like being the owner of the business. And so I think that, that's a really important distinction to make, is that like people can actually do a better job than you. And another really interesting thing about this is like when you're the only guy or girl in the business and you're trying to do everything and the business becomes bigger, ironically, you're probably doing a really shitty job at certain things. And so by saying, like, I'm just too much of a control freak, like, I just would need to get done this way. It's like, you're not even doing a good job at it, And when I say you, I'm talking about me. And so, I had to realize that it's like in an effort to try and control it and do a better job with it, it's actually getting done in a really poor manner. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, like when you think about these companies that have been able to achieve these monumental things, like, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Nike, Walmart, like the list goes on and on and on. You read the biographies about any of these entrepreneurs who started these companies, it's like, trust me, they are infinitely more particular and controlling than you and I.
Mhm.
Years ago, I met a guy who was a lawyer. He was a corporate attorney for Microsoft. This guy, Brian, is super bright guy. This is when we lived up in Massachusetts, and he owned this really big house, clearly did really, really well with Microsoft. And he never met Bill Gates, but he said to me, even just being in a couple internet or a couple email threads with him, he's like, you can tell how intense this guy is and how detail oriented he is and how much he means business. And it always stuck with me because it's like, again, most of us are not that much of a control freak. We're not that intense. And if Bill Gates can let go and like find good people to do the job, then we can all do that.
Mhm.
And again, just to kind of like wrap this all, put a nice bow on this. It's just fear speaking, right? It's just fear telling you like, oh, I just, I'm too much of a control freak. But as soon as you let go of that and you find good people, again, I've said this many times, you guys are probably sick of hearing me say this, like you will get to a point where you will hire somebody and you'll think to yourself, I cannot imagine a world in which I need to go back and try and do it all myself again. Like I wouldn't even want to do that. And so
Mhm.
once you move past that and realize like this entity, this business is not going to be able to grow and continue to grow to multiple six figures a year, $1 million a year, definitely not $1 million a year, definitely not multiple seven figures a year. If that's what you truly want, then you need to move past the idea of like, I'm too much of a control freak to let go.
Yeah, yeah. And I mentioned before, like, there can be like different versions of this. So another one that I kind of thought of is like thinking now it's really good to have like a plan for the future or like a vision of what you eventually want your business to look like or how big you want it to grow or whatever. I think that's really good. But I feel like focusing on that too much can also be maybe like detrimental to your business currently. Like you're focusing on the wrong things versus focusing on like really how to perfect your systems going on now. I think like even if let's say like you're struggling in a certain part of your business, whether it's talking on the phone to people or making sales or even just time management, like your schedule is all over the place and it's causing you to lose business, like those are the things you really, really need to focus on and like really booking your business out to a point where you're booked out and now you can start to like put some focus in I'm booked out 6 months. Let me see where I want things to be in that seventh month or that eighth month. Let me start preparing for that versus again, like being in a position where things aren't perfected currently, but you're still like so focused on that future plan, like 10 years, I want to have all these franchises and I want to be like not training anymore. I want basically the business to just like run itself. But again, like it's good to have that plan, but you don't want to focus on that so much to where it's kind of like ruining things currently.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and just to go back to what I was originally talking about before and how I kind of opened up this episode, I had a conversation with a guy a little while ago, and very nice guy. And what I kind of realized in discovering talking to him was like, do you actually want the things that you say you want? right? And more importantly to that, because you can think you want something, but there's a difference between like thinking you want it and aligning the actions that you take on a daily and weekly basis with that end goal. Right. So for instance, like people will say, like, I want a multiple six figure a year business, or I want a seven, let's just use $1 million dog training company. Like if that's truly what you want and you want to get to $84,000 a month, right? If you're not like aggressively marketing yourself, if you're not, and paying for ads and you have a real website and you're doing everything, outside of even the internet and like networking with vets and, asking for referrals and all these things, and you're just kind of like passively waiting for the business to grow and hit seven figures, more than likely it's not going to happen like that, right? Like you kind of need to force the issue. And so I think what's really important here is to like actually decide what it is that you want. And if you want to have a seven figure a year dog training business, or even a $250,000 a year dog training business, or $500,000 a year dog training business, you need to really think of it through the lens of like, what would somebody who owns that business do on a daily basis, right? How would they spend the money in the business? There's a lot of people who, as soon as they start making a profit, like this is what reinvesting in the business is all about. Like all they're looking to do is pull the money out and like use it for certain materialistic things. Like, oh, like we've seen this a million times, Angel, right? Where like people are making no money. They're riding around in their old hoopty car, right? That like is not a good car, but like they've been driving it for the past 7 years and it's been fine. And as soon as they start making more money, they go and buy a brand new 2026 Jeep or something like that, right? Or they like immediately leave the apartment that they've been renting and like move into this nice place now, right? Or they start like upgrading all their kennels and drop 10 grand on kennels. Like I've seen this happen a million times, and you can convince yourself that it's for the business, but what it really is it's to kind of scratch that like itch for yourself that I just want a new car. I just want a nicer place to live. And I'm not saying that these are bad things to align yourself with, but you can do that, but it needs to come with time. And the main priority in the beginning is like, great, I just had my first $10,000 month and I was able to put away 5 grand. It's like, okay, how can I now take that 5 grand and help turn that into 50 grand, right? What are the things I can do to start exponentially growing the return on investment I've already gotten from this business? And so I'd love to hear from you, like talking about that and like how you've seen that manifest for people and like how you can kind of guard against that like lifestyle creep and, just not putting the attention and the attention and time and the money in the right place.
Yeah, well, I said before that focusing on like your future plan can be detrimental, but when it comes to finances, I think that's like the perfect thing to focus on. And making goals for yourself. So, maybe even like starting out with a new business, having a goal of making a certain amount of money per month. And then, okay, once I start making that much money per month, let me maybe increase my ad spend to this. And then once I reach this goal, I want to make sure that I start putting money away. I want to build my savings to this. Then using those like different finance goals to then kind of like using the car thing for example. Once I reach this amount of revenue per month, then I am going to maybe pull some of that money to put a down payment on a new car or invest in some better kennels. So I think like that's really important is like um budgeting obviously, but just making like financial goals for your business, but also what you plan on doing with that money when it's coming in. And when you were talking earlier about, like having these goals of making a certain amount of money per month or per year, like we've talked about this before, doing like some reverse math. And I actually did this with one of our clients fairly recently. We were talking about like some of his new goals for this year. And he mentioned a number that he would like to reach yearly. And so that's what we did. We did like some reverse math and we figured out like, okay, in order to make this amount of money per year, you're going to have to make this amount of money per month. What is the best way to reach that amount per month? And then we kind of like looked over his programs and broke that down. And it's like the easiest way to get to that amount of money is selling this amount of this particular program per month. Or if you don't do that, then you have to sell, these programs and then also these programs. So we like really like worked it backwards. So I think that's a really good starting point for everyone is to like think of it like for the whole year and just work backwards for yourself. So that way you have every month you have a goal of what you need to hit, or even if it's easier thinking about the programs, like, okay, I need to sell 3 of my 4-week programs per month. And you're like in the middle of the month, or maybe getting towards the end of the month and you only have 2 of those programs sold. Okay, let me start, as one of our clients, Vanessa says, let me get into my beast mode and figure out how I need to get that last one, whether that's like re-engagement campaigns or really just like spending a day where you are calling every single one of your old leads that didn't sign up, but like setting small goals for yourself and making sure that you're meeting those each month in terms of like revenue, but also finances, and like really planning out what you're going to do with that money versus just getting excited when you have like your first really good month and then, oh, I happen to have the money for a new car. I happen to have the money to, I don't know, purchase like all new dog gear or something like that. Do you have the money to do it? Maybe, but is it the smartest decision in the long run? Because is next month going to be just as good? We don't know yet. If we keep pushing, it should be, but you don't know yet. So definitely planning ahead and making like smaller financial goals and planning ahead for those purchases that you wish to make.
Yeah, I mean, saving money just to save money is to me like I've always been the type of guy just to like squirrel it away. Like, okay, like I don't really need many things in life, so just go put the money away in a savings account and like have it a rainy day fund. I've always That's always just kind of been my philosophy. But I've met a lot of people who like get money and spend money, and just spend it ironically just on the wrong things. Like I've met people who they immediately start making some money and they're like, I got to get into a facility. It's like, why? Just like, put that money into your ad spend,
Hmm.
increase that, like go to use it for payroll, use it to like hire another trainer, have them start doing the in-home lessons or taking board and trains out of their home. I see people who they try and jump from version 1.0 to version 2.7, instead of going to like version 1.1, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's very fascinating to watch that. But the thing that I'm really trying to get at here is like, you need to make sure that you do the things every day that the person who owns the business that you want is currently doing.
Hmm.
So like, does the person who owns a $250,000 a year dog training business, do they spend money on marketing? Yes. Then why don't you? Right? Does the person who makes 250 grand a year, do they answer their leads, follow up with people when they call them, right away? Yeah, they do. So like why do you feel like you can get away with not doing that, right? Do they
Yeah.
charge higher ticket programs than you? Do they have a real sales process, right? Do they hire people when they start realizing like their stuff slipping through the cracks and I'm not doing a good job at it? I said this, I think, on the last episode. Like, we all have this ability to tap into and think logically and think about what a successful person would advise me to do in this situation. But a lot of us get so stuck in our own ways. And this is why coaching is so powerful, is because most of us don't need to learn. We need to be reminded. And a lot of us, like what I'm saying there is like a lot of us know the answer already, but it's just really helpful to have somebody who's a third party source that is not like tied up emotionally in the business, be able to remind you of like, hey, this is what you should be doing next. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I just think that's like it's an important thing, and make sure that you're just aligning yourself every single day with the things that are going to get you the result and outcome you actually want. Like for me, what I've had to really face is like I don't want to own $1 billion company. I don't really care about doing that, frankly. Like what I'm more concerned with is like growing a stable company, continue to grow so that we can like, continue to pay people fairly, give people raises, hire more people, help more dog trainers, all that stuff. But if I were trying to grow $1 billion company, first and foremost, like I would probably need to be in a different vehicle, right? I wouldn't just be serving just like this one group of people. But even if I were trying to grow a company that was doing $20 million a year, just serving dog trainers, there's things that I would have to do that I'm not doing right now that frankly,
Hmm.
like I don't want to have to do it, and it's just not how I want to
Yeah.
spend my time. Like I'd have to work way more hours. I'd have to probably sacrifice time with my wife and my kids, and I'd have to be way more demanding of the people who currently work with us, and all that stuff. And so I think the reason I'm saying this is just like to be fully transparent with you guys, and say like it's okay to not to acknowledge that like you may not actually want to run $100,000 a month dog training business. Like it's totally fine. Most people don't own that. Most people never will. But it's not good to pretend and say you want things when you don't actually want them, and you're not actually going to do the things that would result in getting you that. What's way better is to like own the fact of like, I really like having a lifestyle business where we make 10 grand to 20 grand a month. And I have some people on my team, they get treated really well, and it provides me and them with a really nice lifestyle. Like, that's a good thing. And you should just own that, because it's actually really painful to say you want this other thing and then just chronically underachieve it, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah,
Angel, why don't
yeah,
you
that
kind
makes
of pick
sense.
that up and help people make sense of what I'm trying to say here?
Earlier, in your spiel, when you were mentioning like, are
My
these things
diatribe.
are these things that I'm doing in line with things that a successful business owner that does, bring in six figures a year do? And like I always tell people in other parts of their business to kind of make yourself like an outsider's perspective, dissociate, if you will. So like, for example, the things that I typically mention is like, when you answer the phone, only have on your appointment setter hat. Forget the fact that you're a trainer. Or when you are, I don't know, just like, a business owner is wearing a lot of different hats. So when you're in particular situations, like take off all the other hats and wear the one that you need, because people get so wrapped up in everything. And so what I was thinking about is like, same thing. If you were to, let's say, have someone who runs your business for you. You're the business owner, but you have someone that you hired to run the business for you and make all the financial decisions for you. From an outsider's perspective, would you be happy with the way that that person is running your business? If every single time that, X amount of money came in, they're like, hey, go buy this. You have the money now, go buy that new car. And then you buy the new car and you are wiped out again. You have nothing. Would you think that is the smartest decision to make? Or if this person is like, hey, once, we get in this amount of money, let's go spend it all on this and that because it's for the business. So it's okay. And so I think that's helpful, because when you're doing it yourself, like you're the only person that is convincing yourself that these are good decisions to make. The things that you're doing in your business are the right decision, or the money that you're spending for the business is the right decision. So I think like looking at it from an outsider's perspective is helpful to see if you would be happy with those decisions that this person who is running your business is making.
Yeah, super well said. Yeah, I think what you said before of like just focus on being objective and just, in the moment, like whatever you're doing, like if you're just taking a new call coming in, like all you're trying to do is set an appointment, right? If you're going to the consultation, you have your sales hat on, like, yeah, you're going to give them some guidance and help and answer questions for them. But like the goal of that is not to turn that to a lesson. It is to
Mhm,
sell them.
mhm.
And we've talked so much about sales, and like honestly, I don't want to oversimplify that, because I think like there is value in like demoing and giving some advice and proof and stuff like that. But again, the end goal of that is to sell them on a program, not for them to walk away feeling like all their problems were fixed and not getting paid. When
Yeah.
you're training, it's like you have your trainer hat on. When you are strategizing about the business, which I think this is another thing that a lot of people don't do, they never block out time to actually work on the business. They're just so consistently working in the business. Like that's another important thing too. It's like when I find for myself is like when I feel like I'm blocked and I feel like I'm stuck, it's like the best thing I can do is get out, go for a walk and think and clear my head. And a lot of times like answers start coming to me, or I start having like new ideas, or talking to a friend or somebody else who works in the industry. But make sure that if you're talking to somebody, make sure that there's somebody who is doing something that you are impressed by. And if they're another dog trainer, make sure that you are getting advice from somebody who you would trade businesses with them in a heartbeat, right? If like you have to be very careful about that too. And again, I think like it's good to tap into other people's knowledge. Obviously we do coaching for a living, But the ironic thing is, like, most of us, I really think this, like, most of us do know what to do next. And a lot of us are just like, get so stuck because we're so close to the business that we don't think clearly. So you almost need to like block out time to go and get outside, get your body moving, and really try and think about your business from an objective perspective, not an emotional perspective of like, what is happening now? This client's being difficult. I'm feeling this anxiety. How do I fix this immediate problem? But like, really think about like, where do I want this business to be in 3 months, 6 months, a year? And what are the things I need to do in order to accomplish all of them? Yeah. So with that being said, we're going to wrap things up here. But as always, I appreciate you guys tuning in and listening. And yeah, I mean, if there's anything you guys want to hear us talk about, if there's any topics that you find particularly helpful that you've heard us talk a little bit about and you'd like for us to go more in depth, just let us know. We could certainly do that for you. But with that being said, we're going to wrap it up. So we will see you guys all very soon in the next one. See you guys.